When I was 16, I got told that I looked like Bruno Mars. What do y'all think? What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Duran with DuranSupply.com, where I'll help you design smarter, not harder. A few weeks ago, I had the amazing opportunity to do some work for Bruno Mars' tour in Japan. Unfortunately, none of the designs went to print. I think he was looking for some simpler stuff. But in any case, I'm extremely proud of what I came up with. So we're going to break down this graphic that I sent in for Bruno Mars. Let's get to it. Okay, so this graphic was done entirely in VINTONE. If you're new here, VINTONE is a Photoshop template that lets you create these vintage inspired graphics with ease. This video will teach you a little bit about it, but if you're really interested in how it works, I recommend you go check out the product demo for VINTONE. So I'm in the Photoshop document now. This is VINTONE. The only things I changed from the default template is I made the background of the composite white, which is an option within VINTONE already, but by default the background is black, so I just changed that to white. And then I changed the dither pattern from a halftone, which is the default, to more of a Xerox Grainy pattern. So that's how we have the Xerox Grain effect going on in this artwork. But just if you were wondering, this is how the graphic would look if I used a halftone pattern instead. So here it is with the halftones. As you can see, VINTONE lets you choose the style of your graphic pretty easily. So all I had to do to change this from a Xerox Grain style to this halftone style was open up this dither pattern smart object and choose from either the halftones in this group down here, or I can go for more of a Xerox Grain look with these grain patterns here, or I could choose from any number of patterns that I have in these folders, like this diffusion look right here. Here's what the graphic would look like with that diffusion pattern. Really cool stuff we got going on here. But anyway, I'm going to stick to the original Xerox Grain pattern that we had going on in this graphic. So very quickly, I'm going to give you an overview of the template, just if you're unfamiliar, and then I'm going to go layer by layer and show you how I composited and colored this graphic. So VINTONE is pretty simple. It's a 3-step process. You composite your artwork in this composite group down here, and as you composite your artwork, it's being automatically dithered according to the pattern of your choice. So I'm just painting with a normal soft brush here, but that's being dithered with a Xerox Grain look that I have applied in the template. After you composite your artwork, you're on to step number 2, which is just choosing the style of your graphic. So as you can see, this is the Xerox Grain style I'm using right here. You could choose a halftone pattern like I just showed you, or any of the other patterns that I have included in the dither pattern smart object folders. And then once you choose the style of your graphic, you move on to step 3, which is coloring in your graphic, color by color or layer by layer. So this is how I color this graphic within VINTONE. So when I zoom in here, you can see that this is all down to the pixel, and that makes it perfect for color separation and screen print. Okay, now let's go through the actual layers of this graphic. I'm going to turn off the colors here and the processing so we can just get down to the raw composite of this. And I'm going to turn off all these layers here so we can go and break this down layer by layer. So I started off with this photo of Bruno. I masked it to just him, but it's pretty easy because this is a poster obviously and he's masked out. It's a pretty cool photo of Bruno, but there's one problem here. He is cut off at the shoulder here. So one of the first things I wanted to do was lay this out in a way where we could sort of hide or cover that imperfection. So I added this type block up around here just to cover that, but we're gonna go into these layers in just a second here. Let's start with the actual main part of the composition, which is Bruno. So I needed to fill out this side of the composition a bit, and I thought a real cool way to do that was to make this sort of psychedelic duplicates of Bruno moving back in perspective. So that's what this group here is. And you can also see I sort of roughly drew in parts of his shoulder here just to flush that with the type lockup. Obviously without the processing and everything, it looks like shit. It's clearly just a black fill here on where his shoulder is supposed to be, but once we turn the processing on and do all the coloring on this graphic, that's not really going to matter because it gets sort of lost in the sauce. So let me just break this part of the graphic down layer by layer. So like I said, I started off with this photo of Bruno here, and I just painted in roughly a bit on his shoulder here just to fill that part of his body out. I honestly probably could have used generative fill, but not gonna lie, I ain't doing all that. It took me 2 seconds to paint this in. So I've got Bruno along with his shoulder replacements in this folder here, and on that folder I've got a arrangement of layer styles. I'm going to open that up and show you the layer styles that I did on this layer. Very simple. It's just 2 strokes. So one of them is an inside stroke set to white here, and then the next one is a outside stroke set to black here. So that double stroke look here just gives us some more depth and also contributes a bit to more of a cartoony feel. And that's it for the layer styles on that. Very simple. And then all I did was duplicate that 3 times down here to fill out this side of the composition. And with each successive duplicate, I just made Bruno a little smaller and dragged him down and to the left to sort of feign this perspective that we got going on here. And I also added a unique piece to the layer style for each of these duplicates here, which you can see is just a gradient, and I believe it's a different gradient on each of the duplicates here. So I'm going to go through that real quick. So on the first duplicate of Bruno here, obviously I just turned this into sort of a silhouette with the gradient overlay added to the layer styles. And this gradient overlay is super simple. It's literally just a black to white. The only thing I changed was making the style diamond instead of linear, and that obviously gets us that sort of diamond gradient look here, which I did because I didn't want all of the duplicates of Bruno to have the same sort of look and lighting as we go down in perspective. So I made different gradients for each of the duplicates. The first one here is just simple black to white with the style as diamond, and the second one here is the same exact thing. All I did was change the style of the gradient to a radial gradient, and this is just a circle gradient. So it's a super slight difference from the diamond gradient, but once I turn the processing on, you can see the difference in effects pretty clearly. And of course, the third duplicate of Bruno is the same exact thing, just duplicated, made smaller, dragged down here to the left. And I made the gradient on this one a simple reflected gradient. So it's pretty similar to a linear gradient. It just has the opposite end of the spectrum of the gradient mirrored into the other side of it. So this is just a black to white, but with the style as reflected, it gives us white to black to white. And again, we also have the two strokes, the double stroke look going on each one of these duplicate layers. So the layer styles on that are very simple. Just change them up a bit, or change the gradients up a bit between all of them to get a sort of varied look in lighting and later on the color of it. And that helps make this composition a lot more interesting. I also have a texture applied to only the silhouettes of Bruno here. This is from my warm plastisol texture kit, which is available on my site alongside VINTONE. But VINTONE also comes with some sample warm plastisol textures embedded into the template. I believe this is one of them. So I just threw that in here on top of the 3 silhouette duplicates of Bruno, but under the main image of him here, just so that we don't have any major distressing going on his face or anything. I wanted to keep that pretty clear, but I did want some texture and some more interesting feel on the silhouettes that we have of him here. And then lastly, for this group, I just added a levels adjustment and pretty much just painted that brightness into the layer mask. Just some parts around the composite here. Very slight difference. You probably wouldn't even notice it if I turned it off and on. And this is of course all going to come together when we turn the processing back on. So you can see already with the processing back on, this looks a lot clearer, and it's obviously a lot cooler of a design with this Xerox Grain effect going on. And when I'm designing, I do have the processing turned on so I can see what it looks like with the final filtering and effects. So as I design, everything I'm doing, I'm seeing through that sort of Xerox Grain filter. So yeah, this very minimal levels adjustment right here, you wouldn't really notice it without the processing going on and the Xerox Grain effects. But once I turn that on, you can see that it makes a pretty huge difference within the brightness of his shirt here and just the overall lighting of the composition. So it's really useful to have that live Xerox Grain effect happening in VINTONE as you work and as you composite your graphic. Okay, now let's move on to all the supporting elements, aka all of this text over here. I'm also going to turn the processing off for this one, just so we could see more of what we're working with. So this big piece of type down here and this arrangement of Japanese letters up here were all hand drawn in my sketchbook using just a Sharpie and a pen, and then I just simply took a photo of that with my phone, put it into Photoshop, thresholded it to pretty much scan it in, and here we have it. We're going to check out this really big piece of text here first. So this is pretty simple. I just drew this in my sketchbook, scanned it in, and then threw a layer style on this. Here's what it looks like without the layer style. This was just a really rough sort of marker pen that I used, and I really needed to thicken this up and give it some depth. So what I did was put on this layer style, which is a classic layer style that I use all the time. I'm pretty sure it's just a preset in my layer styles panel here. But either way, it's very simple. Let's go into that and check it out. So we've got 2 strokes going on here. Again, we're going with that double stroke look. We have one as the outside stroke, set to this sort of yellow color, which doesn't really matter. This is just part of the preset layer style. This could be white if anything, since we're going to turn that processing on and it's going to turn white anyway. But yeah, so just a stroke on the outside here, and then another stroke behind that set to a slightly higher size so that it's sort of peeking out of the white stroke here. So that gets us that double stroke look similar to what we have on Bruno here. Then we have an inner shadow here, which is peeking sort of underneath the stroke and onto the actual text itself. Pretty simple settings here. I just have these choke all the way up, and that makes it harsh instead of soft. And then I have the distance up a bit to give it that shadow look, obviously, and the size up a bit as well to give it some more body. You can see pretty clearly what that does here if I turn this on and off. I also have this color overlay here set to a dark red, and actually once I turn the processing on, the inner shadow really isn't going to matter because it's so dark that it's just going to turn this whole piece of type black. But either way, I just wanted to go into the layer styles and show you what I've got going on here. And then lastly, I just have a drop shadow to give this some sort of a 3D feel. So this is just a black drop shadow with the spread all the way up to 100. Again, that gives it that harsh look instead of soft. I've got the size up as well to give it some body, and I've got the distance up quite a bit to give it that 3D extruded look. So really simple layer style on this one. Obviously just needed to give the text some body and match it a bit with that cartoon feel of the double stroke of Bruno here, and that layer style did that pretty well. I also have a layer down here. If I turn that on, it's just pretty much a brush stroke going across the text, but it's placed under it, and that gives us sort of a fade out on the images of Bruno here and makes way for the text and just puts some more depth in between those two elements. That was done with some grunge brush that I have in my library. I don't know where I got it from, but it's just sort of like a paint style brush. Doesn't really matter because, again, if you paint with a soft brush within VINTONE and you have the processing and the dither pattern set to that grain look, it's going to give you sort of a grainy fade on that image anyway. I'll show you that right here really quickly. So if I just paint in with a normal soft brush, we get that sort of grainy fade anyway, but I guess I wanted just a little bit more grungy and painter like detail on this specific fade. I also threw in some hand-drawn stars around this text too, which again I just drew in my sketchbook and imported into Photoshop. This text up here as well, like I just said, is just scanned in from my sketchbook, and I also have this type lockup sort of masking or covering Bruno's missing shoulder here. This was a sort of a logo lockup that I did for another design that I submit for Bruno, and I just thought I'd throw it in here as a nice little element to contrast with the Japanese text, and also obviously to hide his shoulder replacement. Pretty simple stuff, just some stretch type inside of a box, you know, not too much going on there. And then on top of this, I have some more textures going on. So this is in the textures group right above the composite, and this is a very slight look. I believe this is a texture from Mo's grunge texture pack or vintage texture kit. Love Mo's stuff. He has some great textures, so definitely go check him out. This is his vintage soft grunge texture, which I masked just to this sort of small portion of the graphic here, just to give it some more grunge and variance, but not too much so as to overpower the whole graphic. And again, we got the processing going on up here, giving this whole composite that Xerox Grain look. Thank you guys for watching this far into the video. If you're still here, I'd like to give you a discount code for VINTONE, and also let you know that if you're enjoying this piece of content, make sure you like the video and you subscribe to this channel. I post videos like this every week to help you become a better designer. So if you're looking to pick up VINTONE, you can use the discount code YouTube15 for 15% off of your order. Just head to durantsupply.com to pick that up and input your discount code, and you'll be able to make graphics just like this in no time. Okay, now let's get into the real sauce here, the coloring. This is where it gets a little complicated. So in VINTONE, the coloring of your graphic is done within these color groups, which you open up and paint inside each one and set the color for each one. And it's done that way so that the colors are also all dithered according to that Xerox Grain or halftone look or whatever style you choose for your graphic. So just as an example, I'm going to paint in the mask of this color group right here just to show you what that would look like. Again, this is just a normal soft brush within Photoshop. When I start painting in here, we get that nice Xerox grainy fade on the edges of this brush stroke, and I could change the color of this just by going into the layer styles of that color group and opening up the color overlay to change that color to whatever I want. So here's how I started off in coloring this. We're just going to open up this Bruno group that I have here, which is an assortment of a bunch of different color layers put into different groups just to organize this a bit more. Obviously we have 4 duplicates of Bruno here, so it gets a little messy in here. We'll start at the first duplicate of Bruno here, which is this color group right here. So once I open this up, you see we have the same exact arrangement as any of the color groups. All you have to do is paint in the mask or make a selection and fill that part in inside the mask to get the color applied to that area. So all I did was grab a selection of Bruno back from the composite, and then I brought that all the way up here and just filled that into the mask to fill in Bruno with the color that I chose. And obviously I chose a yellow color for this in the color overlay here. So that one's pretty simple, but as we move on, it's going to get a little bit more complicated. So once I go to the second duplicate of Bruno here, I'll open that up, and it's actually 2 different color groups inside of here. We have one for the yellow base here and one for the red accent within the gradient. So I started off with this color group down here. So the base of this is actually a red color. So again, it's just a selection of Bruno in the mask of this color group, and I just set the color overlay of that group to this red color. And then for the yellow sort of accent within that gradient, I had another color group right on top of that, and inside of that color group I dragged the actual layer of Bruno with all the layer styles, including the gradient overlay in here. And VINTONE is going to interpret that as sort of a black and white map for where the colors go based on the values within this layer. So since we have that gradient overlay going on, it's pretty much isolating the bright parts of that gradient, and I have the color group of this set to a yellow color. So all the bright parts of the gradient is being reflected as the yellow here on top of the red base. So that's a neat little tip for VINTONE. You can actually drag whatever layers you have from the composite into one of the color groups within the coloring portion of VINTONE, so that VINTONE interprets that sort of image as a map for where the color goes. So for this one, all the highlights of this layer are going to be mapped to that yellow color, and that includes the white stroke as well, which is obviously a highlight within this sort of layer here. So it looks a lot more complicated than it really is. If you have VINTONE, this is probably making a lot more sense to you. And if this is still not making sense to you, even though you have VINTONE, just simply try experimenting with this by dragging one of your layers into one of the color groups and having that be the map for where the colors of that color group is going, rather than just using the default paint and mask option that we have here. Okay, cool. And then it's a very similar process for the rest of the duplicates of Bruno here. So for the third one, all we have is just this base of green color here, which is pretty similar to what we did with the first image of Bruno here. So all that is Bruno masked into this color group, just a selection of Bruno put into this mask here, and then I set the color overlay of this color group to green, and that gives us this green base on this duplicate of Bruno. And you also might notice that these colors are being sort of stacked. So even though the selection of Bruno kind of bleeds into the other duplicates of him, the colors are actually stackable. So let's say I were to bring this duplicate of Bruno above the second one, this color now takes precedence over these colors. So pretty cool stuff that the colors are stackable, and you have to worry a lot less about coloring within the lines really. Okay, and a similar thing for the last duplicate of Bruno here. Same sort of ordeal as the second one, where we have a base color and then the actual layer of Bruno with the layer styles and the gradients, adding those red accents on top of the yellow base here. So again, that's just the actual layer of this duplicate of Bruno brought all the way up into the color group here, and VINTONE is mapping the highlights of this layer to the red color that we have set for it in the layer styles here. And then under that, we just have a normal color group with the selection of Bruno set as the mask for that, so that we get that yellow base of Bruno here. And that's how I did all the blocking out of color for this arrangement of Bruno Mars here. And then on top of this, I have some accents and whatnot. So we have a color group entirely dedicated to some white highlights like his teeth and this type lock up here, and also the fading out of these colors at the bottom towards the text. So if I open that up right here, we can see that in this color group, I have a layer in here where I painted on a similar fade to fade out all of these colors going on up here. Again, like I said, the colors are stackable. So even though I had these colors of Bruno sort of clipping into the text and going over the fade here, all I had to do was put another color group on top of all that and set the color of it to white, and then just paint in where I want the colors under it not to be. So again, on this fade here, and then also on this type lockup, I just grabbed a selection of that and put that in here. And I also painted in a little bit on his teeth here. So yeah, anywhere you paint in white within this mask, or any layers that you have where you painted in white above this painted mask layer, is going to apply the color that you've selected on the layer styles of this color group to the graphic. And then on top of this white accent layer, I have a color group just for the brush stroke here. So the reason I didn't put this in the actual composite all the way down here is because if I put that in the composite, it would turn just black or white, because everything you put in this composite group is either going to be black or white, and any coloring you want to do has to be within the coloring groups above here in the colors group above the composite. So I wanted the brush stroke behind this text to be just yellow, so I made a color group just for that. I had a brush stroke from, I don't know, it was some sort of brush pack that I downloaded off the internet at some point in my life that I still have in my library. So I just added in this brush stroke here using one of the brushes that I have in my Photoshop library. You can probably just search up brush stroke Photoshop brushes and find something similar to this. Then I have this color group set to yellow in the layer styles, and that makes this white brush stroke into a yellow. And since that was sort of clipping into the stroke of the text here, I have another white accent group above that yellow brush color layer, and this one is just sort of blocking out the white stroke of the text. So all I did was have the color group above that set to white, and in here I have a selection of the text as a whole, and just filled that in with white to sort of block that out of the yellow brush stroke that we have under it. Okay, cool, and that's pretty much it for the colors. All I did on top of that was add this colorful layer all the way on top and set that to a dark brown and set the blending mode to lighten. That way it would lighten all the black values of this composite into this nice brown color, which just sort of brings everything together. It makes the whole composition a little less contrasty as a whole, and the brown obviously complements the other warm colors pretty well. And the only thing left to do after this is to prepare this file for print. So here's how I would do that. It's pretty easy within VINTONE. Once we're done with the graphic, all I'm going to do is close the VINTONE group, and I'm going to do Command Option Shift E on my keyboard. That's going to make a merge duplicate of all our layers into one layer here. So this is the entire document on one layer. I'm going to hide the VINTONE group here, and I want to select out the background, the white background here, because the white background obviously is going to come from the shirt that this is printed on. So I'm just going to take my magic wand by pressing W on my keyboard, and I just want to make sure anti-alias is unchecked, because when we're working with VINTONE, all of the details of this graphic is all down to the pixel. There's no transparent pixels in any of this graphic, and if you have anti-alias checked, it's going to create transparent pixels that we don't want. We want this to be pixel perfect all the way down to the pixels. So we're going to take our magic wand, I'm going to select the white background, and I'm just going to press delete on my keyboard. Now we have the graphic on a transparent background. If I were to hide this background layer here, we can see that pretty clearly. And then just to make the job of the screen printer a lot easier, I can color separate this myself pretty easily, again using just the magic wand tool. All I have to do is use my magic wand tool to select out each color in this graphic and put it on its own layer. So with our magic wand tool, we're just going to click on one of the colors in this graphic to start that process. I'm going to start with the yellow here. Just click on that with our magic wand, and then right click and do layer via cut, and that's going to put that yellow color on its own layer. And all we have to do is rinse and repeat that process for all the colors in this graphic. So for the red, I'll click on that and then do layer via cut. By the way, you also want to make sure that contiguous is unchecked. That way when you select a color, it doesn't just select colors nearby to it, it selects that color in all of the composition. So now we have the yellow and red on their own layer. We're going to do the same with the green here, and that's pretty much it. Now we have this black or sort of brownish color on its own layer as well, since we separated all those other colors into their own layers. And I'm just going to name all of these layers their respective colors. So this would be dark brown, green, red. If you want to be really nice to your screen printers, you can name these layers the actual Pantone swatch of what that color would be. But unfortunately, Photoshop kind of removed the Pantone library because they're assholes. So that made it a lot harder to do that. So now I just leave it up to the printers to discern what Pantone swatch is going to apply to each color. But if you're printing this yourself, maybe then that's something you want to do by cross-referencing this color with colors on, I don't know, the Pantone website or something. I'm sure there's a way to do that. I'm pretty sure you could just copy and paste the hex code of the color into the Pantone website or something to find a Pantone swatch similar to that color. And that way you or the printer knows exactly what type of ink and what Pantone color swatch to use when they're printing this graphic. So then once I've got all the colors separated, what I'll do to finally prepare this for print is just select all of the color layers and convert it to a smart object, and that's going to make a new document cropped to all these layers. So once we open up that smart object by double clicking on that layer thumbnail, we have all of these color layers in their own document, and the document is also cropped to the bounds of the graphic. There's actually a little mistake here. There's a little bit of that dark brown color down at the bottom here. That's why the crop is imperfect. But in any case, all you have to do from here is go File, Save, and save this smart object document as the final print file for whoever you're sending this to, and make sure you save it as a Photoshop or a TIFF so that whoever opens this has the actual color layers separated into layers. So obviously you want to save this as a layered file. I usually just send them a PSD file, and that's a wrap. Let me know what other graphics of mine y'all want me to break down. Go follow me on Instagram at Duran Studio, because I'll post on my stories which graphics y'all want me to break down, and I'll let y'all vote on that. So this was the graphic that won the cake in the last story post I did on graphic breakdowns. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want to pick up VINTONE, you can use the discount code YouTube15 for 15% off of your order. If you learned something or like this video, please make sure to like the video. If you like me, subscribe to the channel. I post videos like this every week to help y'all become a better designer. So I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.